Jeff Gurman, he's an investigative journalist for the Las Vegas Review-Journal, known for his relentless pursuit of exposing corruption and holding truth to power. He was murdered. Yeah, and the murderer, Robert Tellis, now found guilty of that murder, but a fairly light sentence for murder, I think one would say. Joining me to discuss, Laurie Gilbertson, former prosecutor. Laurie, I want to talk to you about the narrative testimony that he gave, because that's a little different than what we see in most cases. I don't think I've seen it ever, quite honestly. Can you give me a little more insight as to why maybe he went down this road of narrative testimony? And what is the difference when the judge says, yeah, go ahead, do narrative testimony?
Yeah, I have to say, in my 10 years of prosecuting, I never saw it. I never saw a defendant give narrative testimony in New York. And, I'm not quite sure about everything that went into that decision, of course, between the defendant here and his lawyer. But often what narrative testimony means is that the defendant wants to get up and tell his story, tell his version of events, and the attorney, I don't know if this is the case here, but the attorney is under an obligation not to put anything out before the court and before the jury that could possibly be false or that he knows may be false. So if an attorney knows that a defendant and his client may be getting up to do that, often the attorney steps back and there is this kind of narrative testimony where the defendant is getting up, he's telling his version of events, and the attorney steps back so that he is not a part really of presenting that evidence. That's my understanding of how it certainly works. And I have never seen it before. So it's really interesting in this way for the defendant to get up and do this. It often means, too, that the attorney may not have wanted him to do that. Okay. But the defendant really, really said, I am going to do this and I'm determined.
Well, and he was an attorney as well, the Robert Tellis. So I can only imagine how those conversations went. With his own attorney of, I think I'm always right, and the attorney's like, this is a bad idea. If they are giving narrative testimony and the attorney is saying, not a good idea, or they have some knowledge that what he's going to present is not true, doesn't that kind of speak to the jury like right away going, this is a little odd that even his own attorney is allowing this? Does it imply that Tellis is going to say things that are not true?
As I said, the law behind it and the way that works in court does seem to imply that. But in order for him to get a fair trial, I'm not sure what the judge did in this case, but the judge would certainly say that he has the right to do that. He has the right to get up and talk, and that the jury is not to make any inference from the fact that he is doing it in this narrative way. And that's really how you have to kind of get rid of any assumptions from the jury of why this may be happening the way it's happening.
Let's take a look at some of that testimony that Robert Tellis gave. Let's take a look at him on some tough questions as he tries to explain his way through his weird version of reality. Let's take a look.
You don't doubt that whoever that is killed Mr. Gehrman. That would be fair, right?
Yes.
Okay. You had mentioned one of the things that struck you was you watched the autopsy, or you saw the autopsy photos, and you were struck by the violence of it, correct?
No, sir.
No, you did not? Were you bothered by the photographs?
I was.
And why is that?
Gruesome. I'm not used to seeing dead people.
Okay. I think you said it was ugly. Is that correct?
I may have.
All right. And you had told this jury that you felt like it looked like someone who knew what they were doing. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
You believe this was a professional hit?
And that's what I believe.
Okay. So, and you believe this killer is kind of almost like someone hired to do this job, like an assassin, essentially, right?
That is what I believe, yes, sir.
All right. Now, I want to take a look at this picture for a second. The assassin seems to be wearing a giant sun hat. It's a pretty big hat, right?
Yes, sir.
It's fairly noticeable, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
You think that might attract attention?
I would think so.
Okay, but this is a professional.
Right.
All right. And this professional is also wearing a bright orange shirt, correct?
Yes, sir.
Professional?
Yes, sir.
But wouldn't that attract attention?
I think that's part of the reason, actually. If I could elaborate.
No. You believe that professional assassins want to draw attention to themselves when they're carrying out murder. That's your testimony?
When they're framing someone, yes, sir.
So the answer to my question is yes. You believe professional assassins like to draw attention to themselves.
It depends on what the nature of their goal is, and if it's to frame someone, yes, sir.
So the answer to my question is yes.
Yes, absolutely.
That's got to be frustrating if you're the prosecutor there and you're just stating facts and reality. And he's in his own world. Yeah, of course. Professional assassins want to draw attention. Why wouldn't they? Are you insane? It's got to make you kind of question your own sanity for a moment.
I know there's something to be said here about this being in Las Vegas, but Tony, for the life of me, I don't know what it is, but I know there's something about this being in Vegas that, may kind of add to all of this strangeness. But, as a prosecutor, I'm listening to the questions, and as prosecutor on cross, you want to ask questions, you're stating facts, you're getting the person you're cross-examining, the witness, to either agree or disagree. And you don't necessarily go to the conclusion of you believe professional assassins want to draw attention to themselves, right? So, that's, you don't have to get to that question. Mm-hmm. And one way for the prosecutor to kind of do this and maybe be a little less frustrated, if they were, is just you're getting all the facts out.
Yeah.
And then on closing argument, as I'm sure the prosecutor was able to do, you get to say, he's telling you that this professional assassin wore a straw hat and wore, a big floppy hat and wore an orange shirt and did all this, when in fact, a professional assassin would not be drawing attention to themselves. Mm-hmm. And so you get to make that argument. He did a pretty good job of keeping the defendant in check. Mm-hmm. When that is the thing you hear as a prosecutor, you hear, let me elaborate. And you say, nope, not your turn. You got your narrative. This is my turn.
Yeah, it is fascinating. Let's take a look at some of the closing here. And this is the prosecutor talking about, of course, everyone has to be in on this conspiracy theory, and it must make total sense in the mind of Mr. Tellis. Let's take a look at this here.
And here's the thing that struck me when I took over this case. I would submit to most people, probably before ever hearing about this case, had no idea what a public administrator was. He is not a U.S. senator. He is not a governor. He is not a congressperson. He is a duly elected official who manages an office of approximately 8 people. And their job is to assist people who pass away, who don't leave a will and leave property behind. The public administrator's office is not at the forefront of everyone's mind in this community. No one learns about this until who brings the office to light? Jeff Gehrman. And what's amazing is if you believe that story about this conspiracy, all of these people and all of these entities were willing to sacrifice their reputation, their business, their police department, even the public administrator's office. They're all willing to put it on the line to kill a reporter, to get that guy, even though he's leaving in 3 months? Does that make a shred of sense? Absolutely not. But what it does give you a window into is what's in his mind. That is how important Mr. Tellis views himself. That every single one of these people, every single one of these entities were literally willing to kill another human being who is not him just to frame him.
I thought he laid it out pretty well for the jury to understand. And Tellis's facial expressions, I think, just say so much about his character and being a narcissist. I mean, it's got to be another weird one sometimes to deal with, or probably somewhat common when you're dealing with individuals like this who believe they can do absolutely no wrong.
Yeah, it is unfortunately very common. Mm-hmm. And his facial expressions, the kind of nodding that he was doing or a little shaking of his head, that says something to the jury too. Every single thing that he's doing, he is speaking without speaking. It's not just the narrative he gave on the stand. So defense attorneys will certainly instruct their clients not to react, right? Just don't react. But with a client like this, I think that would have been really difficult. I agree with you that the prosecutor laid it out pretty well. I was wondering kind of where he was going, and then he got there. And conspiracies, you watch TV, people watch TV, you watch movies, you're like, oh, conspiracies everywhere. Everyone's gonna, frame this guy. The prosecutor did exactly the right thing in laying out what has to happen for this actual conspiracy and framing how many people have to be involved, how they have to collaborate and coordinate, what their motivation and intent has to be, and how they pull it off. And when you lay it out that way for the jury, based on that and the defendant's testimony and the evidence they had, a guilty verdict is not at all surprising in this case.
No, I mean, and I know there's no such thing as an open and shut case. This one, it really felt like it. I was surprised it took the jury 2 days to come to their verdict. And then they, after they found him guilty, the sentence was fairly light as well. 20 years, well, life in prison, but probation at about 20 years. He's eligible for it, which obviously doesn't mean he's going to get it. But it seemed the jury was hung up on the hair because the man, obviously, tell us here, who did the murder, he's wearing this borderline like Halloween costume, the giant hat, the blaze orange shirt, his signature cheap Nikes, and there was hair. And it seemed what I've heard from some of the jurors, or indirectly from some of the jurors, that they were hung up on the hair. Obviously, it's a jury of your peers, but are this doesn't seem like a far stretch. If he's already getting in costume to put on a wig, are we getting to a place where juries we're not getting the brightest and the best anymore? Where it takes it to this level of we're stuck on a wig?
Yeah, jury, the thought process of juries is really interesting. And there are a lot of people who study that and a lot of psychologists who study it. And as a prosecutor, one of the most interesting things I found was when I got to talk to juries afterwards and hear what their process was, because that helps you as an attorney to know what to focus on and what not to focus on. And you never know with people's life experiences that they bring into this where they're going to go.
Sure.
You just don't. And it can be so incredibly surprising. The prosecutor in this case really laid it out for them. And often juries will just go and they follow the blueprint. And the idea as any attorney in front of a jury is you want to give them what they need so they can go back and be your advocate for your side of the case. And the prosecutor here did that. The best and the brightest, I can't say that.
Sure.
There was always a joke going around that, it's the 12 people who couldn't get themselves out of jury duty.
Yes.
That happens. But I was speaking to some attorneys at a function last weekend who were telling me, partners at law firms who actually got on juries and thought it was the most interesting and fascinating experience, and they took it so seriously. I have jury duty coming up in October here in Colorado. I'm not sure I'll get picked. I think it would be an amazing window into this. You just never know. You really don't. If you could be a fly on the wall for these secret deliberations, it would be incredible. And that is one thing I gave up guessing about long time ago, although it's fun to speculate.
Well, yeah. I mean, you talk to anybody, go to a restaurant and bring up, you're going to hear totally different opinions on everything. And sometimes it feels that a lot of people aren't necessarily living in reality or their own version of reality, and it's all through their prism.
Yes.
I do wonder, if some people had some empathy here for Tellis, even though his story made no sense. He came across as a raging narcissist, but it makes me wonder, because I feel like sometimes narcissists are kind of like birds of a flock, where they recognize the other ones and they somehow empathize with them. So it does make me wonder. I'd love to know more about those jurors and ask them questions about how they got to their conclusion, and just kind of get their demeanor as well. Because my guess is maybe they felt some sort of kindred spirit here with Robert Tellis.
We obviously don't know.
Yeah.
One thing that is interesting that comes up is very few defendants testify.
Mhm.
Very few take the stand in their own defense. And I don't know what the percentages are. I think when I get off with you, Tony, I'm going to get those. So I have them for you next time. But, here he got up, and no matter how nutty he may have seemed, no matter what kind of a raging narcissist or sociopath he seemed like, it made him human. Right? He's not just the person sitting at the table.
Mhm.
He is somewhat human. So you just don't know if maybe some jurors took that and had some empathy that way. I
Mhm.
mean, they still found him guilty.
Sure.
You don't know if maybe they, that went into thinking about, every little thing, and they took it more seriously. You never know. Often when somebody takes the stand, the jury does seem to impute some sort of true benefit of the doubt because they're getting up there
Mhm.
and because so few do. And of course, the standard is reasonable doubt. And of course, the prosecutor did, got everything out of him, but still makes him more human.
That's
He's
true.
not just the guy sitting at the table. He's now a person who they have kind of had a conversation with.
Yeah.
And that makes it a little harder to sit in judgment.
That's true. I think at the end of the day, his decision to wear the wig is what got him the lesser sentence. So in the end of the day, his
Yeah.
crazy outfit actually saved him from life without parole.
Right. And who knows, in 20 years,
Mhm.
when we talk about this kind of stuff and we say 20 years and throw that around, it doesn't sound like long enough,
Mhm.
still a really long time.
True.
And also, as long as kind of the family keeps showing up and the prosecutor and law enforcement keep taking this very, very seriously throughout the next 10, 15, 20 years,
Mhm.
he may not be eligible for anything. And with a guy like this,
Mhm.
with what he showed in his testimony and with this crime itself, I find it hard to imagine he's not going to get in any more trouble once he's in.
How do you think he's going to fare in prison? Obviously, he was an attorney. I know that sometimes can be an
Mhm,
advantage. But I mean, with a guy like this, though, take attorney
mhm.
out of it, just his personality in general. How do you think someone like this is going to fare behind bars?
He could get in more trouble, right?
Mhm.
And try to try to hatch some more schemes if people come up with things that he doesn't like,
Mhm.
just like he did here. Maybe not that extreme, but also, being an attorney, other inmates may
Mhm.
turn to him for advice,
Mhm.
and this could kind of feed him and his
Yeah.
personality and his narcissism. So, he may really think it's kind of a great world for him to be in. May
Who
work
knows?
out that way for him.
Yeah. Yeah. Who knows? What an interesting
Who
case, though.
knows?
Hey, thanks for checking out the video. Be sure to follow us wherever you download podcasts, and especially Apple Podcasts, where you can get advanced episode and premium content on our premium channel right there. Also, be sure to follow us on social media so you don't miss any breaking updates on the stories that matter to you most. We're on TikTok, X, Instagram, Facebook. Just search Hidden Killers Podcast with Tony Brueski, and you'll find us right there. Again, thanks for watching.